Hey everyone, I just wanted to check in this morning now that we have finished Unit 3. Remember, of course, Unit 3, the everything essentially was extra credit except for the reading tweets. So I'll be doing the scoring and feedback on all of those things as well as the extra credit assignments that you all turned in today. Today, our focus is on the first part of the final project, or final project number 1. And essentially, you are going to be in a scenario thinking about or imagining that you were a journalist from the Tarahumara people or the Raramuri people in Chihuahua who came to witness the Pueblo revolt, who was interested in what was going on in the Pueblo world and witnessed the revolt. And so it will require you to use some of your historical imagination, as mentioned, and it will also require you to use a primary source, the textbook, and an additional secondary source that you find. So you'll want to use the SIFT method to think about how to get the strongest secondary source that you can online. And of course, you can use the CNM libraries. So please do take advantage of that. I will also be posting kind of a walkthrough video of the instructions like I did with the syllabus. I'll post that here in this announcement, but I'll also put it in the section in the weekly learning module, or the weekly, goodness, this is intercession, in the learning modules where it would fit today's date. So it'll be right there next to the instructions for the final project. Just some takeaways from Unit 3. It is important to think about why Diego de Vargas is still considered someone who enacted a bloodless reconquest. Of course, as we read, that was his intention. In 1692, he was able to threaten the Pueblos in Santa Fe with enough threat of force that they allowed him in. But when he came back the next year with actual settlers once again, they did not let them in. They had to lay siege to Santa Fe to get the Pueblo people who were occupying the villa to allow them back in. And then in the years thereafter, Vargas waged war against various Pueblos in order to make them submit once again to Spanish rule. And so it was kind of a protracted, pretty bloody kind of event where Vargas and the other Spaniards took advantage of those Pueblos who wanted to invite the Spaniards back, because there were some that had their own reasons for that, for allying with the Spaniards once again. But they kind of divided and conquered. There was bloodshed. It was not a bloodless event. And so that question is why. And some of that has to do with the Fiesta of Santa Fe. It wasn't done annually since 1712, but the first time it was done was 1712. So maybe almost when the new generation after the Reconquest was probably coming of age. It was a way of celebrating a shared history, of telling a story that erased the bloodshed, that recognized Spanish authority and rule and kind of cultural authority as well, even while Pueblo people were still maintaining their own cultures, their own traditions. It was part of the process of mixing those things, of creating a hybrid culture or a syncretic kind of religious and cultural situation in New Mexico. So it was part of kind of the public observance of helping people buy into the narrative of what is New Mexico and who we are. And as we've seen, those are not always true to historical events, to what actually happened. And so, again, something to think about. Also, it's important to recognize the Mexican period. It was short in the long scheme of New Mexico history, right? It lasted from 1821 to 1848, that New Mexico was part of Mexico. There was a strained relationship, especially as Santa Anna tried to centralize and take away some local autonomy by appointing governors like Albino Perez, who of course met a gruesome death as he went to try to put down the Chimayo rebellion in 1837. So the question, I guess, then is, what was the impact of the Mexican period? And it actually was quite a lot. Despite the fact that Mexico City seemed to ignore New Mexico, that set a precedent for how Mexico relates to its northern states even today. I was in Chihuahua in November, and people there were talking about the way that, in a lot of ways, they feel not necessarily closer to, but they have cultural ties to U.S. traditions and cities. They have family members across the border. They feel ignored a lot by Mexico City, and so they're more interested in what's going on in Ciudad Chihuahua. That's a precedent that we can kind of trace all the way back to Mexico's independence and this idea that there were many Mexicos. Still, with even all of that, Catholic observances, as well as the production of money and taxation and things like that, did bring New Mexicans into the Mexican nation in ways that they themselves recognized, even as they were trying to have more and maintain more of their own local autonomy. And so as we finish up then this first half of our class with the Pueblo Revolt's final project assignment, we'll then be moving on to think about the U.S.-Mexico War and the U.S. territorial period. So that's what's coming next in Unit 4. All right. I hope that, again, that your new year is off to a good start, that you're doing well. Please, as always, let me know what questions you have, how I can help, and I'll talk to you soon.